Hello and welcome to the Serial Talker podcast. I'm Peter Von Gomm. Today's podcast is about something that I find very intriguing and have always been fascinated with, and that is con men, con people who are suave enough to pull a fast one on people and keep a ruse going and benefit financially from it, sometimes in the sums of millions. The story I'm going to tell you about today is a relatively well-known one. This guy was known as the Dine and Dash Dater in LA, and he was swindling these women out of dinners. He'd go out on a first date, they'd go to a nice restaurant, he would woo them with compliments, and then go to the men's room and never come back. And he did it enough that he became this serial Dine and Dash date charlatan. Brilliant. Let's get into the story. LA's Dine and Dash Dater, originally published in the Daily Beast by Jeff Maysh. It was the spring of 2016, and Margie Moon had a spring in her step. She was wrapping up her long shift at the hospital emergency room and excited about her date that night. You see, she matched with a handsome guy named Paul. She stepped into a dress and high heels, transforming herself from a tired trauma nurse into a hot date. The 47-year-old divorcee from Los Angeles was inundated with offers from men on matchmaking websites. For Moon, dating involved racing home from 12-hour shifts while wrangling babysitters. She has 5 kids after all. Scheduling often killed off any chance of romance. Smooth-talking Paul shared her love for fine dining and invited her to the Tam O'Shanter, one of LA's oldest eateries. "I'm gonna go with or without you," he told her, removing any indecision. Soon, she was driving across the city, full of hope that Paul, 43, could be the one. He'd sent her videos of his 2 adorable young sons and said he was the CEO of the LA fitness gym franchise. But as she handed her keys to the valet, Paul Gonzalez was arriving on foot. Paul's dyed black hair was thick with gel, and he exuded short guy energy. As he held open the restaurant door, his light green eyes sparkled. "Look how beautiful she is," said Paul as the waitress seated the couple. Then, loud enough for everyone to hear, he boomed, "I don't deserve to be with her. She's so gorgeous." Paul edged his seat closer to hers, then got to work on the menu. Moon said he ordered a salad, chicken, fish, and 2 lobster tails on the side. When Paul finished, he summoned 2 more lobster tails. After rounding off the meal with a devilish chocolate souffle, Paul declared that he wanted to date Moon exclusively, then stepped outside to make a phone call. A few minutes in, "I had a funny feeling," she said. He never came back. Hot with embarrassment, Moon told the maitre d' she'd been ditched. She had never experienced anything like this. Soon the waitress was sitting in her date's empty chair, crying. "I wish I could take care of your bill," she sobbed. "I'm so sorry." But Moon had no tears to cry. She paid the $250 bill and marched out, imagining the cost of the meal in emergency room hours. By the time she reached home, Moon was fuming. When Paul sent her a text message asking, "Hi, how are you?" she exploded. She called a girlfriend who convinced her to put the word out. It was late at night when Moon angrily typed a Facebook status update. "Here are the pics of the man who ditched me at dinner. Please share on your Facebook and tell the story so this loser doesn't do this to others." But it was too late. Her post went viral, and her inbox filled with other victims of the same man. His name wasn't Paul Azzini, as he had told Moon, but Gonzalez. He'd told women he was an ABC sports editor, a sports agent, and he worked for the Lakers. Gonzalez was seemingly everywhere. A widow from Calabasas claimed he'd ditched her at the Cheesecake Factory in Sherman Oaks. "Do you know if he ever lived in Colorado?" asked someone else. His victims all thanked Moon for being their voice. "Us girls need to stick together," Moon replied, and decided to put it all behind her. Then, the media happened. Television stations, a producer from Steve Harvey's radio show, and a Canadian podcast all contacted Moon for interviews. Victims shared other media requests on Facebook Messenger. Appearing on a CBS News segment, Diane Guillemette revealed that Gonzalez ordered not one, but 2 entrees at a Long Beach restaurant before leaving her with a $163 bill. "He's a very, very handsome man," admitted another scammed woman. "His eyes are absolutely gorgeous." News anchors soberly issued bulletins warning viewers of the handsome bandit's modus operandi. Gonzalez quickly enticed women into a dinner date, ate like a king, then bolted, deleting his dating profile on the way out. The 5'5" Lothario mostly drank tea and the occasional glass of wine, but focused on high-ticket food items like filet mignon. U.S. Weekly and CNN called him the Dine and Dash Dater. Online, Gonzalez sparked a national conversation fueled by gender politics. Some people argued that for decades, women have done the same thing to men by expecting them to pick up the check. Scientists at the Azusa Pacific University examined the myth of the foodie call, finding that 23 to 33% of women had set up a date only for the purpose of getting a free meal. The report found that these female offenders scored highly on 3 dark personality traits: psychopathy, Machiavellianism, and narcissism. Was this Gonzalez too? Louis B. Schlesinger, a professor of forensic psychology at John Jay College of Criminal Justice, who did not evaluate Gonzalez, said his behavior may just be his own personal gratification of getting one over on somebody. But why? Paul Guadalupe Gonzalez had a difficult childhood. He was born in Montebello, California in 1973 and grew up in Alhambra in the San Gabriel Valley. In kindergarten, he chose to sit next to the teacher, preferred adult conversation. He idolized his father and was devastated by his parents' divorce. When his mother met a new partner, 7-year-old Paul told the man his dad was the boxing champion Roberto Duran. It was one of his earliest fabrications. A teenage Gonzalez became a fitness fanatic, and at 17 found work as a gym membership salesman. He could sell anything to anyone, a relative said. He intuitively understood a person's wants and needs, and later sold everything from rubber bands to rifle scopes, earning $20,000 a month. He liked to order steak and lobster on his corporate credit card, gambled in Las Vegas, and dreamed of starting a sports betting company called Sportstradamus. But a messy divorce seemed to derail his life. By 2016, he was unemployed, flat broke and stripped of his expense account. He started to look for ways to eat for free, a court later heard. Gonzalez signed up for multiple online dating accounts, presenting the picture of the perfect man. Perfectly groomed at all times, he looked like a hunk from a barbershop poster. His profile photos included tight vest selfies taken in a gym's mirror and portraits with his 2 sons, whom he dressed in immaculate matching outfits. "I'm very fun, positive, humorous, and adventurous. I love sports, music, water sports, and traveling and dining out and trying new things," his profile read. "Looking for someone to be super adventurous and create a lot of memories and smiles together." He was against casual flings. "Not my style," he wrote. #too classy. Just days after his date with Marjorie Moon, Gonzalez finished a creme brulee at the Yard House in Long Beach. He held up 2 fingers and told Irene Rodriguez, "I gotta go number 2, before escaping into the night. "I just sat there dumbfounded," she recalled. "I was mortified, embarrassed." In July 2016, Lenice Levine, 52, said Paul had promised her Barbra Streisand tickets, but ditched her at a Mexican restaurant in Westwood. 2 years later, in the spring of 2018, he was still at it, leaving Tina Martinez to pay for his filet mignon at Smitty's Grill in Pasadena. Even when Gonzalez was arrested for a snip and ditch, he fled a barber shop with the smock still tied around his neck. Police found no outstanding warrants. His dates were too ashamed, to report his dining misdeeds. Had he created the perfect crime? God, I love this story. On April 13th, 2018, Detective Victor Cass was summoned to his sergeant's office at the Pasadena Police Department. The 49-year-old investigator was handed an anonymous Crime Stoppers report concerning an incident at Buca di Beppo, an Italian chain restaurant in nearby Glendale. An onlooker had noticed a male diner abandon his date and filled out an online report. Cass is slim with tidy black hair and holsters his Glock 9mm beneath sharply cut designer suits. He specializes in commercial burglary, but unlike most detectives, he has a fine art degree and leads a double life as a novelist. His romantic thriller, Telenova, was a Latin indie publishing hit. Colleagues call him Casanova. Cass is also a veteran of online dating. He was divorced in 2003 and recalled a decade of searching and swiping before meeting his long-term girlfriend while on duty. Back in the old days, I was on the more primitive dating sites like eHarmony. I even used online matchmaking services. Over the years, he met women from MySpace, Match, Plenty of Fish, and Bumble. According to one wisecracking cop in the office, maybe it takes a Casanova to catch a Casanova. Cass thought a dine and dash was a fitting crime for a food lover's city like Pasadena. It's the birthplace of Chef Julia Child, home to 500 restaurants, and one of America's few Le Cordon Bleu culinary schools. To its residents, Pasadena is known as the City of Roses, and it's Cass who cleans up its quirkier criminal cases. They're what we call the X-Files, he says. Recently, he captured the Glass Man burglar, a thief who skillfully removed window panes, and the Guitar Bandit, who delighted newspapermen by pulling off a string of thefts. When the detective typed Dine and Dash into Google to brush up on the law, he was surprised to find hundreds of news reports about one local man named Paul Gonzalez. He had, fans, and they were like, "Hey, he's not doing anything wrong," said Cass. Some websites called Gonzalez scummy and douchebag of the week. This guy was not on any police department's radar, said Cass, yet he was one of the most wanted men in America. At home, Cass had a daughter about to turn 18. He'd taught her responsible dating, including how to spot deadbeat guys. So far, he was impressed with her choices, but he found it hard to think about her falling victim to someone like Gonzalez. Cass says Gonzalez is not just victimizing women, but disrupting the internet dating economy. The detective traveled to various apartments linked to the suspect, expecting to make a quick and easy arrest. But Gonzalez had no fixed address. We couldn't just go out somewhere and pick him up. He had to be stopped. And thus began the manhunt for Paul Gonzalez. Since the first restaurants opened their doors, innkeepers have been plagued by customers who wish to eat but not to pay. In 1885, a Boston oyster house cashier complained to the Chicago Tribune about so-called restaurant deadbeats. What the devil a man thinks he's going to gain by robbing a restaurant of 35 or 50 cents is more than I can comprehend, he said. Notoriety was the ambition of Belgium's Titus Claris, who became famous for ripping off over 100 fine dining halls, but he was stabbed to death in 2014. Suspects included various restaurateurs. Meanwhile, Australia's Dine and Dash queen, Lois Loader, 44, racked up thousands of dollars in unpaid restaurant bills before pleading guilty to 82 charges. She spent 2 years behind bars because, unlike Gonzalez, she dined alone, making the restaurants her victim in the eyes of the law. Cass studied the Crime Stoppers report and realized he had no witnesses or victims, just the scene of an alleged crime. He telephoned Buca di Beppo and found the waiter on duty that night. He discovered that the victim paid the bill using her Visa credit card. He petitioned Visa to give him the name of the victim's bank, and soon Cass was there, leaving a business card for their customer. A few days later, a woman named Daisy Valdez called Cass. She was the Buca di Beppo victim. Like Moon, Valdez was a nurse, and when she met Cass outside a hospital in Upland, she was still wearing her blue scrubs. Cass showed her his six-pack, 6 mugshots, not his washboard stomach. Valdez easily identified Gonzalez and his green eyes from the lineup of 5 Paula-likes and told Cass a familiar story. She had matched with him on Bumble. He claimed he was a physical therapist with 2 daughters. At dinner, he ordered a chicken salad with added shrimp, sank an iced tea, then vanished. Out of embarrassment, she would later close down her dating profiles and never date online again. The conversation was all about him, Valdez told Cass. She couldn't get a word in. The divorced mother of 3 said she was convinced to meet him because he was so direct and persuasive. "You want to know how to get to know somebody?" he texted her. "You meet him right away." Cass said that based on his own dating experience, he realized that Gonzalez was a smooth operator. Game recognizes game. In a reversal of his usual investigations, Cass contacted various news outlets to ask for access to victims. He called producers and journalists who connected him to a dozen of Gonzalez's dates. He said that during interviews, many victims blamed themselves. Was it something they said or did? Cass reassured them it wasn't their fault. He'd have to convince them to overcome their embarrassment and give evidence in court. Otherwise, Gonzalez might get away with it. That was a big challenge to get them to open up, to let them trust me, he says. He promised them, justice will be served. You know, we're going to do everything that we can to find this guy, to arrest this guy, to see that he goes to jail. Cass interviewed Martha Barba, who said Gonzalez invited her to an after-dinner fireworks show at the Rose Bowl in July 2016, but disappeared after telling her to order dessert. "I was embarrassed. I felt humiliated, just wondering, what did I do? Did I say something?" After paying the $180 bill, the single mother said she struggled to pay her rent. Other victims said they were still struggling to deal with their emotions. After her date with Gonzalez, Irene Rodriguez said she had trouble trusting anyone and quit online dating forever. Another victim said, "It just makes you feel like a piece of crap." On April 27, 2018, a woman from Santa Clarita was arriving for a first date with a match from Bumble. Carol Meredith had lost her job of 17 years at a television studio and was paying the bills with temporary work, while hoping to graduate from plus-size modeling to acting. Mike told her he was a sports agent, but later said he worked in advertising. He just knew all the right things to say, Meredith says. He also sent her a fake photograph of a bodybuilder. By the time Meredith sat down in Pasadena's Mercado restaurant, Mike had already polished off a plate of shrimp tacos. "I know it's probably surprising," he said, patting his stomach, "but I can eat like 2 meals." He ordered a carne asada and a glass of iced tea, while Meredith politely ate her chile relleno. Then, when Mike slipped away to use the restroom, he found the restaurant's manager blocking his path. Justin Levas recognized the man's face from the television. He called up a photo of Paul Gonzalez on his cell phone. "Aren't you the notorious dine-and-dash dater?" he asked. "This is you, right?" "Yes," said Gonzalez, stunned. "Well, I'm not going to serve you," said Levas firmly, and chased a flustered Gonzalez out of the restaurant. Levas appeared at Meredith's table and showed her his phone. Her meal was on the house. "You've been duped." Meredith said the incident left her feeling completely humiliated and shattered her self-confidence. "When it happened to me, I was dumbfounded," she said. "I was more angry than embarrassed." Meredith swore she'd never date online again. A few days later, the telephone rang to the desk of Detective Cass. It was now the second week of his search for Paul Gonzalez, and he had plenty of witnesses, but few leads. He picked up. "He struck again," said his lieutenant. "What?" "Yes, it's on the news. Go look. He hit Mercado." Cass opened an internet browser and typed "Dine and Dash" for the 100th time. Inside Edition had the scoop. "This man needs to be stopped," Carol Meredith said into the camera. God knows how many other women he'll attempt to do this to. Mercado was just 9 blocks away. Cass threw on his jacket. What was once a cold case with dead-end leads was now a live one with a suspect at large. The television crew had beaten him to the latest victim, but Cass knew to interview everyone, not just the manager. A server told him, "I also work at Houston's. This guy struck there 2 days ago." Cass knew Houston's had security cameras. He raced there to score video of Gonzalez in action before the restaurant routinely erased it at the end of the week. He watched Gonzalez slipping out of the front door, mid-meal. "You can see the time frame. Everything was brilliant, great evidence," Cass said. Back at his office, Cass started to assemble his victims. He saw that the women were from all backgrounds, all races, and ages. Gonzalez didn't seem to have a type. He just wanted 3 courses and no bill. As more women encouraged each other to come forward and give evidence, it was as if Cass was arranging characters in a plot from one of his own books. A Victor Cass novel usually features an ensemble of bodacious female characters who must overcome adversity by working together. In Black Widow Bitches, his dystopian war thriller, a ragtag group of American women trained to become deadly combat troops, helmed by Elias Marin, the only male officer able to lead them. Telenova revolves around 3 outrageous Latin women and a raunchy daytime soap opera. The Jacket promises a girls' night out, friendship drama, and sexy romps. His writing explores the interior lives of women more emphatically than it does men. Cass jokes, "I am half woman on my mother's side." Cass applied for a search warrant on Gonzalez's cell phone. He analyzed data records to triangulate his suspect's movements, hoping to find where Gonzalez laid his head. It was all over the South Lake District at all hours of the night, which led me to believe he was homeless, Cass said. One location was a parking structure where transients surreptitiously charged their phones. Cass had a theory that Gonzalez's phone held an electronic shrine of evidence. He needed to get his hands on that phone before Gonzalez erased everything. On May 17, 2018, Paul Gonzalez was captured, but not by Detective Cass. An Inside Edition TV crew was laying in wait outside a Pasadena branch of Starbucks. They spotted Gonzalez enjoying a coffee just yards away from Mercado, the scene of his last crime. "Hey, you've been going to local restaurants with women you meet online," the anchorman barked at a startled Gonzalez as he crossed the street. "You've been leaving them with the check. Don't you feel bad about that? Why don't you apologize to them?" But Gonzalez didn't apologize. He ran away, trailed by men carrying cameras and a boom microphone. On May 21st, Cass tracked down Gonzalez's ex-wife, an aspiring Instagram influencer who curates a food and fashion account. Among the avocado crostinis and cucumber margaritas, Cass recognized the 2 children he had seen in photographs Gonzalez had sent victims. Over the phone, she dished up a brief history of her life with Gonzalez. They had fallen in love, married, and settled down, but their relationship soured. She told Cass that Gonzalez had once enjoyed high-paying jobs, but not anymore. She didn't know where he lived. On May 25th, at a luxury apartment building in Pasadena, Cass pressed the buzzer to the home of Gonzalez's mother. They spoke at length about Paul. "She's a respected clinical social worker," he discovered, "and her other children are settled and successful." She didn't know where her son Paul was either, and hadn't heard about the allegations. Cass, who served on the police department's mental health crisis unit, had become fascinated by Gonzalez. "I tried to pin down his motivations and psychology," he said. As the detective built a profile of his suspect, he realized that in 26 years of policing, this was his strangest and most difficult case. He'd now gathered 20 victims from all over Los Angeles. Each victim seemed to lead to 3 more. Cass knew the biggest challenge would be to convict Gonzalez. His crime wasn't theft, because the restaurants were usually paid. Cass visited the district attorney's office, where they hatched a plan. All of Gonzalez's victims told Cass they were too embarrassed and afraid to make a scene. He thought of victim Yolanda Laura, who was conned into buying Gonzalez a seafood dinner at a Beverly Hills restaurant so swanky she couldn't pronounce its name. Laura was so scared that she had to build up the courage to tell the waiter what had happened. A deputy DA said the fear element could amount to extortion, a felony. The charge could mean serious jail time for Gonzalez, but after a month, Cass was no closer to finding him. One afternoon, Cass had an idea for a honey trap. We had a female officer create an online dating account. We had her go on Bumble and create a profile to see if she could lure him and save all the text messages. We wanted to see if Paul bites. They planned to send the officer on a date with Gonzalez, wearing a wire. They uploaded some photographs in the office, and together they wrote her profile. She was in for a surprise. The experience for women online is vastly different than for men, explained Cass. An attractive woman can set up a dating site and instantly, like within 20 minutes, can have 50 contact requests or messages. Our officer was horrified at what these guys sent her. Cass said the unnamed officer is gay and was appalled at the wild messages she received from men. Crazy statements, outrageous things, said Cass. Dick pics. The experiment was a failure. Sadly, he never took the bait. Cass started to worry that he'd never catch this man. You know, a lot of time passed, and we weren't able to get this guy. If he didn't make progress, he'd have to focus on other pressing cases. The hipster shoplifter was targeting the Madewell store in Pasadena's Old Town. Cass was waiting on DNA results to convict the rock burglar who smashed into buildings by hurling stones through windows. Cass was also concerned that if another officer arrested Gonzalez, they wouldn't know to confiscate his cell phone. Maybe Gonzalez would sit in the back of a squad car and delete his digital trophies. This is probably gonna sound kinda weird, okay? But I'm a pretty religious dude, Presbyterian, Cass said. I believe that everything is predestined to happen. I pray all the time. Cass said he hit his knees and prayed, God, let me find this guy. On the evening of August 25th, 2018, Cass was working overtime in Pasadena's Old Town. I know a lot of people down there, so I get to socialize, and, it's kind of fun. It's kind of interesting to see all the characters. You're people watching. It's also a good opportunity to look for revelers with outstanding warrants. He had been tailing Gonzalez for 4 months and started to see Paula-likes everywhere. I had gotten all the victims. I felt that I had solidified the case. I just had a feeling, because of all the work I'd done, the guarantees I'd made the victims, I had a feeling it would be me that would find him. At just after 9 o'clock, Cass noticed a street vendor strolling down the boulevard, hawking Lakers t-shirts to tourists. Springing to action, he grabbed the man and threw on the handcuffs. Cass recalled, my partner told me, man, Cass is really cracking down on these vendors. But then he heard the detective make the radio call. This is Footbeat 3. We have Paul Gonzalez in custody, the dine-and-dash dater. News of the arrest quickly circulated the police department. Though it was a stroke of luck and not a splashy sting or epic foot chase, Cass was a hero. I think the victims were extremely pleased and happy, he said. They never thought they would see the day that this guy got busted. That night, Cass typed out a text message to the victims with the happy news. Carol Meredith was at her desk when the text message landed. Yes, 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 she screamed. Just as Cass predicted, his suspect's phone was full of dating trophies, photographs of hundreds of women. I was able to go back to at least 2013, said Cass. During his interrogation, he asked Gonzalez if he was a demented, sick individual, or if he was like sex perverts that get some kind of perversion out of victimizing people. Or was he another type of person, somebody who deep down has a lot of anger? Because they were abandoned by their mothers when they were young. The reality is, I did it one time, Gonzalez pleaded. One accident without meaning. It wasn't like planned. Well, no, Paul, it wasn't just one time. It was multiple times, said Cass. And in fact, during my investigation, I found out that over a 3-year span, you did it to at least 13 women. He made out that he was a perpetual dating victim. He tried to portray himself as the one getting catfished in relationships. Gonzalez went on to say that he had various physical ailments, including an injured back, and claimed he only felt better when he ate fine foods. If he didn't, he said he'd get weaker in both body and mind. He would feel numbness and pain in his body. Yeah, right. Nice try, Paul. On August 27, 2018, Gonzalez was charged with 7 felony counts of extortion, 2 felony counts of attempted extortion, and 1 felony count of grand theft. For good measure, prosecutors added 2 misdemeanor counts of defrauding an innkeeper and petty theft. Together, he faced a possible maximum penalty of 13 years in prison, a year for each of his victims. The heavy charges further divided the public. Felony for eating and running? Someone scoffed on Twitter. What a waste of tax dollars to imprison someone for that. Unable to make bail set at $315,000, Gonzalez remained in custody until his court date. He told me about stories from inside the jail, Cass recalled. He lived like a hero in there. Inmates were high-fiving him, and even some of the deputies. On September 11th, Gonzalez appeared at a preliminary court hearing where some of his female victims sarcastically complimented his lime green prison jumpsuit. He was definitely the cleanest, sharpest-looking guy in court, and county jail probably, Cass recalled. His hair was always coiffed, and he always came in looking like he was ready for one of his dates. Gonzalez pleaded not guilty, then listened to witness statements from half a dozen of his victims. On the witness stand, Wendy Luttrell told the court about a February 2018 date at Pasadena's Parkway Grill. Gonzalez said he needed to wire money to his daughters in college in Arizona, then vanished. I didn't have a choice. He left, so I had to pay the bill, said Luttrell, a 52-year-old divorcee. She avoided causing a scene in front of restaurant staff and added, "It's not their fault that he's a jerk." Gonzalez interrupted proceedings to complain to the judge about his court-appointed lawyer. While it would have made for incredible entertainment, the judge shut down the idea of Gonzalez representing himself. After hearing the evidence, the judge concluded that the women were the victims. But victims of what crime? That's really the issue, he said, before concluding it wasn't extortion. When the prosecution didn't agree with the judge's ruling, the deputy district attorney asked for a rare motion, sending the case to a superior court for ruling. It was all very dramatic, said Cass. A superior court judge agreed it wasn't extortion. Instead, Gonzalez pleaded no contest to 4 misdemeanors, 3 counts of defrauding an innkeeper by non-payment, and 1 count of petty theft. While it was not the 13-year sentence Cass had hoped for, Gonzalez was sent to jail for 120 days and ordered to pay $240 in restitution to 2 of his victims, proving there's no such thing as a free lunch. He was placed on probation for 3 years and must stay at least 100 yards away from 5 restaurants. He was also barred from the dating sites Plenty of Fish and Bumble, who sent flowers to victims, including 1 bouquet that carried a note reading, "Sorry, we got your back, girl." There was a party atmosphere outside the courthouse after the judge handed down his sentence. "I believe in karma," laughed Carol Meredith, who had encouraged other victims to speak to the media and the police. 8 of the witnesses arrived at a nearby restaurant for happy hour, where glasses were clinked and appetizers shared. "It was pretty awesome," said Marjorie Moon. "We all got to meet each other, and to know that you're not the only one, it was kind of nice." When a waiter arrived with the lady's check, he was surprised by a gale of laughter. After he was released from jail, Paul Gonzalez's mother was asked about her son. From her professional perspective as a clinical social worker, her son's behavior may have been caused by his ugly breakup, which triggered unprocessed pain from his childhood, the feeling of being abandoned. She was upbeat about his future and said he's focused on being a great father to his sons. He's all about reading to them, explaining everything to them, doing math with them, baseball, basketball, and football. He's all about their social skills, how to order food at a restaurant. Gonzalez claims he's innocent. He insists he only ran from one restaurant. He'd never met some of his alleged victims. The whole thing was a conspiracy. It was the women who catfished him by using outdated photographs. I got tired of paying for people who were scamming me. According to Gonzalez, his dating days are over. He says he's in a healthy relationship with newborn twins at home. He also boasted of a new high-powered job for Nike and the NFL, which, well, perhaps we should take with a grain of salt. According to Dr. Frank McAndrew, a professor of psychology at Knox College, the construction of the fantasy seems to be an important part of his process. The only thing that makes sense here is that Gonzalez gets a rush from pulling off each new caper. The planning of it, luring the victim in, and, at least for the moment, being the center of a desirable woman's attention. McAndrew said he expected Gonzalez to strike again, as the thrill of getting caught is probably part of the fun. When Gonzalez met the author of this story for a cup of coffee, he placed a used coffee cup on the counter and asked the server for a free refill. After he bounced off to find a table, a tired-looking manager appeared. "I've been here since 4:30 this morning, and that man has bought nothing," she said flatly. "He's not getting a refill." At another cafe in Pasadena, Cass sometimes bumps into Gonzalez. Cass is banging away at another book, based on a real-life villain who likes to eat, but not pay. You might see them one day if you're in the City of Roses. Just two Casanovas enjoying a cup of coffee. What an awesome story. I certainly feel bad for these ladies. They all kind of suffered this PTSD, post-date stress disorder. And for good reason. I mean, he's playing on these middle-aged women, maybe not had a date in a while, or they've been through some bad relationships. And he is totally playing them like a fiddle and taking advantage of them. And that's a terrible thing to do to anybody. But I'm just really fascinated by the whole process and the way this guy thinks and operates. He's a textbook sociopath. And old Paul, he really knew what to look for and how to sweet talk these people out of a dinner. He certainly deserves a Scuzzball of the Year award, a golden Scuzzball of the Year award. No, on second thought, we don't want to give him anything of value, so he would just melt that down for the cash. But, man, it could have been a lot worse, though. I mean, a lot of con men go after people's bank accounts and wipe out their life savings. So we have that to be thankful for. He just left them with a Cheesecake Factory check. Thanks, Paul. Well, thanks as always for listening to the Serial Talker podcast. Much appreciated. If you like these kinds of podcasts, by all means, please subscribe to the channel. And if you would like to help support the production costs, you could always buy me a cup of coffee. Those details are in the description of this podcast. If you have an intriguing story, something that's compelling that you would like me to consider reading, please send it on. That email is also in the description. Thanks always, guys. We will see you next week for the next Serial Talker podcast. Ciao for now.